Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. This is the third session of our Games Insight Month here at Yuki. Today, delighted to welcome Jude from PlanetPlay, along with Felix from PlanetPlay as well, and with a very special guest, Tristan from Trailmix Games, here to discuss how the games industry can take climate action without sacrificing profit. Fantastic to have you guys all on board. What I would say, just for all of our guests here, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or into the Q&A box, and we will we'll monitor those as we go on. But without further ado, Jude, do you want to take it away and maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you to everyone for joining us on a hot sunny day. And I hope you're getting to enjoy the sunshine while you listen to us. But yeah, my name's Jude. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of PlanetPlay. Just in summary, we are a platform that are helping gamers and game studios to go green, but do it in a way which enables games to grow. So going green in a very sustainable way. We have an online store to sell games, of which a percentage of the money goes to green projects, and we do in-game activations, which also raise money for green projects. And we're also kind of coupled with the help of celebrities and marketing channels to boost the awareness that games get for going green. So I won't give too many spoilers away because I'll leave that for the rest of the chat. But yeah, I'll pass over to Felix, and then Tristan, if you want to go after Felix.
Yeah, I think basically you said it all, Jude. So I head up the game partnerships here at PlanetPlay. Again, thank you for giving up your afternoon to be with us today, especially in the sunshine. And we'll chat loads in a second. So I'll pass over to Tristan.
Hi, yeah, I'm Tristan. Been a game designer for about 20 years now, and about 7 years ago, started co-founded Trailmix, and so we're a casual puzzle mobile game studio. A lot of us were we helped to set up King's London studio back in 2012, which feels like many eras ago now. But we set up Trailmix to make games that weren't just snackable but also nourishing. So kind of baked into our core principles is this idea that how can we make games that are, have mass reach, but also actually give the players something in return. What can we actually give back to our players and hopefully the world at large, which I guess brings me here today.
Thanks, Felix. Thanks, Tristan. Well, I guess today, we've got a very kind of conversational format. We've got some questions that we're going to be asking of each other and covering off a few different key areas that we believe are really important to learn when it comes to games going green and the upsides and also some of the challenges as well. So I think one thing that I want to kind of start on is this just demystifying, why games and climate action, because the two seem very disparate, but actually they work perfectly together. Both to make a positive impact on the planet, but also the planet can make a positive impact on games. And it's great to have Tristan here from Trailmix, who I think is just an absolute shining example of the future of games. We saw during COVID that people were moving away moving away from violent games and playing more meaningful games, and actually games that can connect people to other people on the planet are really powerful in terms of our own development and the development of our planet. So I just wanted to hand over to Tristan first and really kind of open up the talk today with why games and climate action, why is gaming so important to saving the real world? So yeah, if you can give us your theories.
Yeah, this will take the rest of the hour. Games are, it's the most popular form of culture on the planet, and culture changes society. You just have to point to, if you've seen Adolescence on Netflix recently, or any other example like that, it absolutely changes the conversation. Culture can normalize things that are not yet normalized but should be. And given games, the massive reach of games, we can reach billions of people. We have the opportunity, and I think the moral imperative as well, to actually use our platforms to actually normalize what should be a a fairer, better, cleaner society, which sounds very utopian, and we'll talk about all the challenges in a minute. But I think it's just a great opportunity. I'll just like quick example of our game Love and Pies. I think through we retain our fan base because of our sort of story world that we bring in. I'm very proud of the themes there that we do normalize through it, of making a much safer environment for marginalized communities there, eh? And so you can very much apply the same thing to climate as well.
Thank you, Tristan. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the, the phenomenal reach and engagement and, these kind of borderless worlds and communities where we can meet other people that care about the same things as us, even on topics that we feel are quite isolating. And when you look at climate change, it's such a huge topic. When you find others and other ways that you can connect with and do something, I think that's games' superpower when it comes to how games can be that that connection between the digital world and the real world to saving the planet. But Felix, I'm going to hand over to yourself to get some of your thoughts on that kind of opening question.
Yeah, I mean, it really is it's a convergence point of all media, right? Games at the moment. I think games' biggest struggle, as we've recently heard, really is social media. So it's that battle of mind and screen share more than anything else. But if you think, thanks to our friends at Playing for the Planet, they ran a survey 3-4 years ago now of 400,000 people, and 82% of those people said that they would be happy to contribute in some way to save the planet. So we know the platform's the right place to be talking to the audience. And we know games are the medium, so I think it's awesome. I also sometimes bring up this example, and many of you have heard me say this before, and it's like a magician revealing his tricks, I suppose, to some degree. But when I was at Natural Motion and I was head of licensing for CSR2, which is a racing game, and big shout out to the Natural Motion Zynga crew if they're out there today. But the game was originally designed to be a simple point-to-point racing game, like traffic light drag racing game, and very quickly it became a social meeting point, and people would go and play that game because they had similar interests and beliefs rather than it being a game or an entertainment product. And what was fascinating to me was how weddings were created as a result of that game. There was a funeral, and it was attended in real life by the people of the crew of the person that passed away, which really, really touched me. So, and we often said that the CSR development team really were a team of behavioral psychologists more than game developers, because we really wanted to understand our audience. So we know that the time is right, the platform is right, and if we're going to make anything sustainable and something that's going to create a meaningful difference to the world, then that's the way to speak to everybody. So those are my thoughts anyway, Jude.
Thank you. Okay, so next question is really about kind of giving some examples to bring it to life in terms of what's been happening in the industry and in games. Tristan, I know that Trailmix, you've done so many great things when it comes to supporting the planet, and we know how passionate you and your team and your players are about this. So yeah, if you can give us some examples of what you've been working on and how they've played out.
I think we've done a couple of things. I think we can always do more. But yeah, so we've dipped our toe in with Jude and Felix late last year, and also last few years we've been doing Playing for the Planet's Green Game Jam. These are all really good initiatives. They're helpful frameworks to focus you on when you as a company are going, okay, we as a bunch of individual game developers want to do right, but how on earth can we do it? They're handy, and so for us, we have it's a game as a service that we run, and so we have time limited activations in our games every year. We're around different green themes, and say last year, for example, the theme was around in the Green Game Jam around getting your players to actually take an action. What the action was in a green context was almost less important than actually taking that first step out your door. And it was a theme I really loved. But there are many ways you can actually tackle the climate crisis through your games as well. And so we've had many discussions. And I would say, many challenges, some successes of what our players respond to, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But I'll say as well is that in addition to, if you already have live games going and you can embed a live event in there as well, which might run for several weeks around a certain theme, we've always tried to be clearer and clearer around, all right, what's the goal here? Is it a knowledge-based thing? Do we want people to care about an environment challenge that's happening or whatever else? Well, I don't know. I'm going to lose myself in so many lessons that we can learn. But I'll say as well is that it's also taught us as we're starting up new games now to actually think very, very carefully about what the fundamental building blocks are. Um, so yeah, now we're very much developing our themes of our new games of Trailmix to make sure that they're really compatible and will attract the kind of audience who in turn will actually respond really well to the eventual sort of green initiative and activations in our new games, even more than our current game Love and Pies.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tristan. Felix, and what about you? Can you give us some examples of activations that have been happening through the likes of Make Green Moves?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a bit of a commercial guy. So I've come from years and years of business development and game partnerships, and bringing that knowledge to something like PlanetPlay and sort of channeling that towards the planet is very, very different for me. And the way I've approached this really is with that commercial lens. And ultimately, we're here to raise funds to help save the planet. We work on various different projects and they all help different causes. And I think that's amazing. And really, when we look at the games industry, and our wonderful founders looked at this originally and thought, we could make a green themed game. We could do that, and help fundraise during that. But actually, they then thought, well, wouldn't it be better just to work with all the wonderful games that are already out there, games that are already established, and help activate through those games. So really, the player journey is not really altered. A player plays the game they like, and we do something within that game that makes it very easy for them to do something relatively small that actually results in real world change. And that was a very different sort of lens to take and a different direction to take. And then once you think about the communication to, like when Jude and I are out there, and Connor, hi Connor, if you're listening, when we're out there approaching studios, it's a very different proposition if we approach a studio and say, hey, can you donate to us, versus like, we want to work with you and build something cool with you within your game that will enable people to donate and to help change the world. And the way we've done that, and we've been very successful in doing that, is to drive metrics, the metrics that everybody's looking at, especially in free-to-play in-app purchase games on mobile. And we've driven some extraordinary results from that, and so many of you heard me say this so many times, I can only apologize, but 6% increase in downloads of one particular title, 104.8% increase in user acquisition. So those stats are important because we obviously understand that game studios need to survive. Times are really hard out there, and actually coming up to someone and saying, look, can you make a donation for this green project is a hard sell. But if we say, we're going to help drive an audience for you and drive numbers to your game, and by the way, what we do, our portion of it will go green, is a very different proposition. And I think that's been the exciting part of the journey that I've been on thus far. So last year we launched, and Jude, stop me as you always do if I speak too much, right? I do go off on one sometimes. July last year, we launched a new initiative. It's called Make Green Tuesday Moves. And the idea initially when we set this up was to activate every month on the first Tuesday, so 12 in a year. And it would be a collection of different studios that would all release green content in their games. And we would do some sort of rev share from that content, and we'd put it towards green causes. And we amplified this further by introducing celebrities. So we launched with, and I'm sure most of you know this, with the Hoff in July, and then Joe Jonas, which is where our journey started together, Tristan. Joe Jonas in October, and then Demi Lovato in December. So it's a real interesting mix of celebrities, green, the green audiences, the games and their audiences, and a mix of UA really across multiple different titles. It's something unique and something no one else has really done before. So I don't know if I've over answered your question, but that's everything I've got.
Always.
Yeah, thank you for that.
But I think thank you for that. I think I guess what this shows is that kind of breadth of how games can go green, from having specifically developed games for the environment, right through to games that may not have anything to do with the environment but can make a corporate donation and message to their millions of players to tell them, because just getting that message in front of people is really powerful as well. But Tristan, I love what you said as well about how you're the next title is looking at kind of like building this into the foundations. You've got these kind of proven building blocks that you will attract, you know, the future audience, or the audience that care about this topic. And we know there's a lot of gamers who do care about that topic. And so, you know, back to Felix's point of, you know, when our founders were thinking about, like, you know, they love gaming and they really wanted to do something for climate change, and they thought about building a game, but they're not from a gaming background. I think we leave that to the game developers, the people who know how to build incredible games, as Tristan does. And if, you know, think about how they weave this storytelling and the mechanics of climate action into the fabric of the game. So yeah, so I think, you know, there's just such a breadth depending on the type of game, you know, the genre, the audience type, the platforms that you're on, in terms of what can be done. And really, you know, that's what we're trying to advocate in the industry is, you know, you don't have to have a particular type of game to do something. The point is you can do something. And I think what's interesting is that, you know, you've got the people who really, really care in terms of audience, and you'll always have a percentage of people who don't care at all. But that movable middle, I think, is a real opportunity in the games industry to encourage people to do something. I just want to throw one more idea into the mix, because it's something I care a lot about. But you know, over the past year, and actually the past 5 years, we've been working also on connecting gamers to climate policy. And so, you know, a great way that games could take action is enabling players to speak up, to, you know, to hear their voices and really gather sentiment and attitudes on this topic. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we worked with a UN office called UNDP, the UN Development Programme, and their job is to work with 120 countries to change climate policy. And they approached us and said, right, we want to reach everybody on the planet and get them to speak up on climate change. And they knew that the only way that they can reach people was through games. You know, they'd watched people on the underground in New York playing Candy Crush and Angry Birds, and they thought that's the way we're going to get to people. And so we've been working with them on deploying, you know, very quick small surveys in game, asking people 7 questions. It takes no more than, you know, 30 to 40 seconds. And we get a huge amount of response globally, even from countries that, you know, have never been asked about climate change before. And what we're seeing is that we're getting people to speak up from all corners of the planet. People who maybe are, you know, can't vote, too young to vote, not allowed to vote, too scared to vote, but giving them a voice on this topic. So essentially, games are an incredible tool to democratize climate change as well. So I think that's a really interesting route as well. And over the course of this relationship that we have with the UN, we've been kind of refining what we do and also using that data for studios to understand how their players feel about climate change, so that they can be more strategic in their green content strategies, and using it for the industry as well. So we've got studios coming to us to say, right, we haven't done anything yet and we don't know where to start. So we look at our data and go, right, you know, these gamer demographics or these genres or these markets care about these sorts of things, and that's a great place to start. So as a starting point, you know, we're starting to build this data to be more strategic and have more visibility in terms of what the world cares about, but also how we're tracking on progress and trends over time. So it's just another angle that, you know, isn't kind of connected to games in terms of, you know, games and climate policy, but I think it's it could have a huge impact from a systemic point of view.
Jude, on that, have you got an example of how that could practically evolve? So you're a game studio, right? You've run the survey, you've got the data back, and the data might say, we don't care, right? Or it might say, we care most about this particular thing. How would you use that? And how could that be beneficial to you as a studio so that you can sort of really sort of make the most out of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's looking at kind of the themes that players may care about. So do they care more about, you know, reforestation or oceans or farming or food? So what themes do people care about? In what way do they want to support? Do they want to fundraise for green projects? Do they want to learn more? Do they want to help raise awareness, sign petitions? So it's really finding out, you know, the themes, the mechanics. And then also, I think what's really important is finding out the cadence. How frequently do people want to take action? Because, you know, at the end of the day, you're there to play a game. You're there to enjoy playing a game. But yeah, how it's integrated into a game, I think, has to be really respectful of the game and the player base. So using this data to better understand that is key as well. But yeah, ultimately, if the majority of your players came back and said, no, then you'd have to really seriously consider how you do that. It could be that a team really care about climate change, but the players don't. So, is there another way, through like an internal corporate donation where employees are given a budget where they can select where the money goes, or a percentage of your profit goes to charitable projects, and again, enabling your employees to pick, because it's used. This could be a really good way to engage employees as well. And a lot of people today, when they go to a job interview, they ask about ESG or CSR policies, sustainability. They really care about this. So I think having some sort of mechanic internally is equally as important as having something externally.
Yeah. And could that data maybe be used to actually influence or change the game narrative itself? Like, have you seen examples where like people go, Christ, we better cover that in the game somehow? And also, I'm linking that into Tristan because I love the way that he alluded to building games with this in mind. And I wonder whether there's something there. Jude, have you seen games change and kind of embrace this and use it?
So I think we're too early on in the process to see games change from the data at the moment, but we've had games companies come to us to ask to use the data for future content and game releases. So we are seeing the request for this information from studios who haven't, studios and for games that haven't used or haven't done anything around green before. We haven't seen the content be implemented as yet, but I think that's coming. So the survey that we did, the most recent survey we did was November. So it'll be interesting to see at the end of the year how people have used the data and have case studies from that. So
and the last quick thought from me, and what happens if I see something on there and I want to be part of this survey? How much will it cost me to be part of this survey in this following year?
You're such the commercial guy.
Such a good softball. You sit it up there.
It's absolutely free, Felix.
Carry on. Ignore me.
Can I take that one from there? Because I think you guys, we've all mentioned just now phrases like real world change and going green. It might be worth breaking down what that can mean.
Yeah.
As a designer, it wasn't until I started researching, going down crazy rabbit holes. I met a couple of hundred different climate activists and academics and all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until then that I realized there are a million ways to actually get in there through our games, no matter what the games are, to actually find a solution that works for our players. And so the survey is a good example where it's like it's got a really clear purpose to be in a game, which is you want to reach X number of people around the world, and that might be across multiple games for this survey, and whatever comes back will come back, sure. But it means you've got a tool that you can wield whatever you do with it next. There's a clarity of goal there, which often hasn't been there in certainly a lot of the stuff that I've designed as we've learned to do things. It's so easy to make the goals muddied, and you might just go, I don't know, I'm busy and I don't have much time to research this stuff. I will highlight a polar bear that's endangered, which is not to denigrate polar bears, but so what? If you make a pop-up about polar bears in the game, what are you expecting your players to do without clarity of design? What the outcome should be, whether it is, like you say, internally in the studio, or the behavioral change you want to inspire with your players. Without that, I think any activation is going to be a failure. It's going to be dead on arrival, I think.
Totally.
I can talk, if you like, about last year's Green Game Jam activation, which I think was mostly a failure, which I can say because I designed it. It had a lot of interesting ideas in it, but I tried to shove in too much, basically. And the idea was finding a grab bag number of ways to inspire our player base to take a green action in their local community. The idea being that if they took one little action in their local community, join an allotment group, or cut down on meat, or whatever else, like have a whole smorgasbord available to them, then that would be amazing, and they might go on to larger actions. However, I tried to shove in so many different ways there. You could unlock interviews with activists. You could unlock a toolbook around all the different ways that you could go out and take an action. And in the end, that muddied the waters and compromised the sort of effectiveness of the design. There were good bits as well, which I can talk about in a second. But yeah, I think just to that breaking down and knowing exactly what going green means to you as a studio and what your one target is super important. And at that point, I think there's no substitute for research, getting out of your gaming bubble and talking to climate activists, academics, whoever else, or and now I'm just plugging Jude as well. Actually, seeing the work and interrogating Jude and Felix, sort of like the organizations that you've gathered and you deem as like the worthy ones for funneling money to, as well. But I think that's just wanted to say that clarity and research are just so incredibly important.
Yeah.
Sorry,
completely.
go for it, Jude.
Sorry, no, on you go, Felix.
I was going to say, you said there are a couple of successful bits you took away from that.
Yep.
I'd love to know what they were.
Yeah, well, I think this is a thing where you got to treat your players as citizens, not consumers. So the model oftentimes, especially if you're time poor, right, and you maybe you've just got your CEO or whoever to grudgingly allow you a 2-week sprint to go make a pop-up or whatever, which is often the case. Like, there's so many studios, especially right now, are so under the gun. However, if you've managed to get that, it can be really tough to actually find what works. And so therefore you might make something that without meaning to, you just speak down to your players in a one-way conversation. It's just one simple through line. Whereas the most successful, I think, I hope, ideas of the future will be ones where you get your players actually being aware of each other. There's an initiative a lot of media outlets are doing right now called the 89% Project, which is 89% of people around the world through meta surveys really agree on their governments doing a lot more policy-wise than they are at the moment to fight climate change. But those same people believe that only 40% of their fellow citizens think the same way, which isn't true. So the world thinks that they're more alone in their views than they really are. So the one successful thing of our Green Game Jam was that we incentivized people to submit their own little stories of an action they took, whether during the event or before. And then we made a feedback loop. So through our socials and through the event as well, we just keep bubbling up these stories. We ended up getting 12,000 stories of little actions that our players took. And if you want to get sort of a restoration of faith in humanity, just sit down and read through the spreadsheet. So it's 12,000 once you remove all the non-answers, right? And so we're making little booklets, and we'll get sort of these out a lot more. But we're sitting on a treasure trove of incredible, heartwarming, and inspirational things from our players. You mentioned a survey. It's another form of it, really, of just showing the sentiment of our players. So I can't wait to share more of that through our channels and stuff, But that keeps me going.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean and that's so inspirational as well for other players and other studios. I think I can't wait to see that come out, and it's so true when you start to see what comes out of what players say. So with the survey that we do, Play to Act, we'll roll it out every 6 months, and we want to start seeing basically tracking that longitudinal view of how people feel, what their attitudes are over time. And I think something that's been really powerful has been when we ask players, we ask them how they feel about climate change, we ask them how they feel about games taking action for climate, what they'd like to do in game for the planet, if they played green game content and how it made them feel. And we ask them also what they did, did it inspire anything in the real world for them? And the 2 top responses were changes of changing habits and changing consumption. Now, obviously, it's what we're being told. We can't track people like in the real world because that that would involve stalking, and that's not right. But over time, you can look at the trends and actually if we're having a positive impact. And what we saw was that games that are doing something on a regular basis around the planet had a higher response rate in that category, but also people felt more empowered, which I thought was really fascinating as well. So if they'd played green game content and they were exposed to it on a frequent basis, they felt more empowered about the topic. So we're basically creating opportunities for people to take action. But I think you're totally right. You have to have your kind of goal in mind in terms of what you're trying to do. I mean, the work that we're trying to do on the policy side, we're involved in something called the Great Project, which is a 3-year EU funded project. Academics all around Europe supporting it. And, you know, for us, the black hole is, okay, well, what policies changed? Because we know we're feeding the data into policymakers. But then, you know, we're looking at systems like Climate Policy Radar, which is an open data platform for climate policies. And if we can link to that in terms of what players are saying and what policies are changing, we could potentially start to see if we're having that real world impact. But I think in the first instance, having people speak up, having the channel that goes to policymakers, and then you know, over time being able to track that, I think is really powerful. But I'm clearly passionate about that side, so I'm gonna move on, because I think I mean, Tristan, you started touching on some of the challenges and obstacles, and I think this is you know, we've talked about it from kind of a game design and game and implementation perspective, but I think we're really interested to talk about the internal challenges as well, because studios have a lot to do. They've got a lot of priorities, and it's been tough times. So yeah, open floor to like the challenges and obstacles of going green at this particular time.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, and it can quickly be seen as a luxury. Our studio, we got kind of these values embedded, and we find it incredibly tough. There are always good arguments. At the end of the day, you know, we have 70, 80 people. We must be responsible employers and make sure we prize security. Our industry is facing incredibly tough times as well, right? Like it's not a great context to try and then pipe up and go, yeah, let's try this one, guys. So you pursue the harder thing, and that is I guess the hope, the testable hope that you can marry achieving strong KPIs with any feature that you do and moral good at the same time. And I believe in the idea that you can make both an upward spiral, right? But that isn't easy. And so in the past, what we've done is horribly stupid things, like we have a roadmap. Our team would have a roadmap, and then some founder comes along and says, we must make a green game jam activation, and it just causes stress. Now it's countered by a lot of us at our studio really care about this stuff, and we're really proud of it and want to make it happen, but it causes unforgivable stress, and never do it like that again. What we found is you need several things to happen. One, you need a leadership team that doesn't block you in doing this. And so if you feel like there's a few of you at your studio who want to get this done, I think Jude and Felix can speak more eloquently to the marriage of business sense and moral sense together. But it's about integrating into your normal planning. This year we're doing what we should have done from the start, and so we have our most successful sort of seasonal events in Love and Pies. One of them will be sort of our marquee green activation, and it lasts for a whole month. A lot of our resources always go into these, and dev resources. They're the ones that are most beloved by our players. It combines every element that's great about our game, and now we get to thread the theme in there, rather than doing what I did in the past, which was invent whole new event types without any time to A/B test them, run through iterations of whatever else. And so piece of advice would be to avoid a lot of the pain is look at your roadmap, what features already work, that if you are taking the first steps, that you know you're not going to compromise the business side of your live product or whatever else it is, and start there. That might be the single best piece of advice I can give. Meanwhile, you know, keep researching and keep building on it. You won't gain momentum if right out the gate you make a feature that just stresses your team out and pisses them off, and then has negligible impact because the design is a bit crazy. So yeah, I would go start with what you have in your toolkit already. There are always ways to wonderfully modify them thematically to really make sense.
I think that's such great advice. You know, it's just use what's there and what's working, and you know, build on it with your green themes. But yeah, Felix, I mean, I know that you know you spend kind of day in, day out talking to lots of studios and helping to build the business case. So what's your insights on
I'm glad you asked me that question. It's incredibly difficult, and it's, you know, I'm doing an extremely good job. I think Ray is maybe listening in, who's my boss. No, it is really hard because, as Tristan said, you know, times are hard and you've got to make sacrifices. And in many cases, we have viewed, or let me say, the green space is viewed as a nice to have, which is why, if I take you back to my original conversation, whereby we're approaching this as a win-win, like everyone's got to win from something, right? I can't be turning up to studios and saying, look, just give us the money. You know, it has to be, we want to do this cool stuff with you, which will hopefully result in some money, which will not cannibalize what you're already doing. That's a very different proposition. And also, you know, again, as Tristan said, a lot of people, well, some people care about the stuff, some people simply don't. But generally, there will be people in your team, and there'll certainly be people in your audience and your player base that do care. And it's about appealing to them and providing them with something tangible that makes them feel good. And you never know, they might spend more money in the game as a result of that. So kind of everyone wins as a result of it. But no, I mean, it's tough, but I think we've approached this in a very different way, in a novel way, and I think it's working, and we've proven that over the last year. So that would be my thoughts. How about you, Jude?
Yeah, no, I was thinking kind of like some of the words, like your description and what Tristan said as well, in terms of, you know, meshing together. What's the marriage of commercial and the morals? I mean, it's kind of like you and me working together. You want
Explain.
Morals.
Which is which? Sorry, Jude, I don't know. I'm the one with the morals, right?
No, other way around.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's that, you know, in the same way as Tristan described of, you know, build on what you've got already. It's, you know, thinking about the existing KPIs that you've got and how green can help achieve or work towards achieving some of those KPIs. So, you know, with the work that we're doing at PlanetPlay, I think, you know, working with celebrities, working with marketing channels that will give games like incredible exposure and a unique edge to try and find more players, engage players in new ways, have new conversations, and drive monetization. You know, we think about this really, really commercially, but ultimately, what we're doing is we're saving the planet. But it's a tool in the box to achieve our KPIs, and like Tristan said, it should you know, work with what we have already. But I think yeah, I mean, it's probably a good time to talk about. We wanted to mention what's coming up in June as well, because I think that's an awesome example of a marketing channel that I think will really support game studios. But Felix, do you want to?
No, you take it. You've got the floor. That's yours.
Okay. No, I just wanted to give one example, and it's something we're really, really excited about because we've seen a lot of excitement from the studios that we're working with. But I think it's a great example of how to leverage marketing channels and reach KPIs by going green. But we are this year partnering with Summer Games Fest. So many people will know Summer Games Fest, very consumer focused. It leads into the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley's Game Awards, which in December had about 180 million viewers, 8 times bigger than the Oscars. You know, an incredible marketing opportunity for games to showcase either new games or new game content. And so in June, we're going to have the Green Game Showcase. So a whole 1 hour of showing games that have gone green. So we're super excited about this because I think it's just such an incredible platform to show the games that are really kind of doing good and giving back and supporting the planet. But ultimately, you know, what we're also trying to do is help them drive audiences on this incredible platform. So on June the 7th, so Summer Games Fest is June the 6th. June the 7th, we'll have the showcase being shown. We'll also be partnered with other kind of distribution and media platforms to get exposure of the showcase. But that's one example of something that is purely for you know, entertainment games. But if we can infiltrate these channels with green and give games a way to drive more UA, because that's the big challenge today, right? UA is so expensive. But if we can do it in a way that is just purely about making an impact on the planet, then it's a win-win for everyone. But yeah, just one example of hopefully many. You know, we can use these channels and be creative and you know, infiltrate them with our green messages. Yeah. I'm just keeping a check on time here because that is just completely flown in. I didn't realize it was 23 and we've got 20 minutes left.
I knew it would.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to open up in a bit to questions, but we've covered quite a lot of the questions that we want to cover in this conversation. It's been great. But I think what I want to ask of both Tristan and Felix is, so what more can games do? You know, we've given lots of great examples, shown what we've done, what we've seen being done, what is coming up, but what more could we do? Or what could be tried that we haven't tried yet?
Oh man, oh so much. We've barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Like our planet is burning. We need to do everything we possibly can. I think that comes back to the research because it opens up so many opportunities. The more you learn, the more you realize that climate affects every single topic in our society. And the wonderful silver lining of that is that you can create games that actually fight quite systemically against the climate crisis without ever mentioning the phrase climate change. And I think that was a wonderful moment for me of going, okay, great. Like if like we need very obvious on the nose sort of efforts happening, and we need other ones which are more tackling our sort of fundamental problem of real world isolation in society today, right? We are more real world isolated than ever, as we also get addicted to our social media platforms. Like there's all these angles around. If you think some green initiatives are not right for you, look at what your players are experiencing in their lives. Our cost of living crisis, like the price of food, all these things have green answers which can be articulated in different ways, and all of them unlock different game ideas. But everything from what Jude and Felix said to I'm organizing a big old game jam in the coming months about new forms of participative democracy, which is getting very political, but I think a lot of studios have to get political. My dream, though, is there will be I hope a mass market game that comes out. I make mobile phone games, so I'm hoping it's a mobile phone game because to reach hundreds of millions of people and achieves the scale, but it's set up to be a permanent mobilizer of millions and more millions of people to take action. That is the dream, right? And the commercial component works. We haven't seen that yet, but we should. There's no reason we can't dream and hope and make that happen, and we all need to help each other get to that. And yeah, I think it starts with a lot more sort of little droplets forming the bigger wave, right? And so everyone who takes the time to make seemingly the smallest little activation in their games, you learn something. And then all it takes is stubbornness. And if we're all bloody stubborn together, then those little drops can join together into something bigger, right? That you just got to believe that. I'll stop. I could go on.
I
No, I
think
love that so much. Oh,
that is the moral answer. That's the good answer. I'm going to counter that now as well and say that if you don't believe in any of that kind of stuff, right, then believe in the fact that 2.43 billion players do, and tap into that market. Even if you just think of it as greedily as a marketing channel and a UA channel, a download channel, we're happy to ride that wave with you, and we'll do the moral bit.
I'll add. I completely agree. Like
I know.
My point is yours in that it's like you can absolutely appeal to self-interest, but it's not just your leadership team's self-interest, it's your players' self-interest as well. And so the green activations that I've led that I don't think were very effective is partly because it didn't also go for the self-interest of our players. I don't really just mean we didn't bribe them with gems enough. It's also about there are ways in which you can just show an understanding of what's going on in their life. There are ways in which you can connect them to their lived experience, whether it's bills or housing, heating, etc. And there are ways in which you can do that and not turn people off and still really tackle some systemic issues. But it can be quote unquote self-interested for a start.
Yeah,
yeah.
totally agree.
But I think on your point of, we haven't yet seen this massive game which makes like a positive planetary impact. But is that yet to come? I think yes, because if you look at the generations and how they, Gen Z, they're very passionate about climate change, and I think the leadership of today is really empowering people to take action and think about new ways to take action, and then so excited to see what the next generation do because everyone cares about it. Even I've got a 6-year-old who gets really frustrated when he sees litter on the ground. Like he wants a litter picker so he can help clean the planet up. But, it's these generations that are, it's going to be weaving climate action I don't think we will even have to talk about it. It'll just be part of day-to-day life, you know, in terms of how we think, how we act, how we play. And so the games that will be created, I think, will start to cover these topics, but without mentioning climate change, as you say. So
That's
yeah,
that's a lovely loop back to the start of normalizing the world we think should exist.
exactly.
Beautiful. Some questions there, I think, Jude.
So yeah, so we have some questions in the chat. Oh yeah, and if anybody has any questions, please do ask away. If not, we'll just keep talking. But Felix, so we've got from Andy Minton, we've got is the analytics around the uptake within games with environmental rev shares available anywhere? We'd love to arrange a call in.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, for sure. It's all available. Drop me a message after this and I'll send it over to you.
Okay. And we've also got case studies on our website as well, so we can share those. And Andy, also you'd mentioned, so the data would be useful for us in terms of the types of game we're building. So yeah, happy to talk, Andy. So yeah, let us know how to reach you and we can set up a call. And then Andy.
Andy's our biggest fan. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. Brilliant, thank you. So I also think the next big thing around this subject is potentially coming from a small indie team and not a AAA outfit. Innovation is happening in smaller outfits more and more. 100%.
Oh,
Yeah.
it always is. It absolutely always is. And you need to combine that innovation with helping them reach scale, you know, like how can that happen if you believe that impact comes from scale? So it's as always, like the indie scene are the ones who provide the answers so often.
Yeah, agreed. And we've got another question. So what are people's thoughts on online security within games such as Roblox, Fortnite, and the efficacy around climate actions being exposed through these behemoth platforms?
That's a very loaded question. On certainly on the safety side, I think that's a very different conversation possibly to the climate side of things. But I think it's a challenge that they haven't won yet. I think it's an evolving and ongoing thing, and I think they're moving into territories we've never seen before, with audience sizes we've never seen before. And I think, unfortunately, it seems to be getting worse as far as I'm concerned, rather than better. But as I say, no one's done this before. And I know that hasn't answered your question, but it's a big question. Maybe we can add that to the topic of conversation if we have that chat.
Yeah, and it's definitely something, you know, like Felix said, it's in the infancy, and you know there's still lots to learn. But I think that one thing to add to that was nothing to do with Roblox and Fortnite, but you know, I think in the work that we've been doing and surveying players, it's all anonymized. So we only ask for demographic information such as age, gender, and education level, and that's because we can link that back to the questions, and it gives us much deeper insights in terms of who's saying what, and you know, we use that in kind of the academic space and also the policy space, which is really helpful. But we never ask personal information, and we find that engagement rates are really high and completion rates are really high. Actually, we get a lot of people answering the demographic profile questions. So I mean, we're seeing engagement rates of north of 50-60%, completion rates of about 70%, and a completion on our surveys includes the demographic profiles. So I think when you don't ask people for personal information, or you know that your personal information isn't being tracked, you're much more honest, especially when you're playing. I think what we find is on mobile, you know, you're in a real personal moment. You can we don't know it's you, so you know, you can say what you like and be as honest as you like, and that's what we want when it comes to this topic. So yeah, so I think it's a really interesting question, Andy, and I don't really have an answer for you other than experiences outside of those platforms, but I think it's definitely one to watch. Tristan, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, you said it well.
No. So I mean, we've got a few minutes, so you know, I guess we can keep talking until, you know, unless there's any other questions. But I mean, Tristan, what would be you've given loads of advice, but what would be kind of like your top bits of advice for any studios that are looking to go green?
It's tough. It's tough to generalize, right? Because so many studios are in different situations. I would give different advice based on what can you do in your existing games. If you have 2 people in 2 weeks versus if you can make a whole new game. But to those of you who might feel like you are a voice trying to yell into the darkness at your studio, or you're trying to like win over more support, I think first I'll just say please keep being stubborn and keep being curious and keep learning. I found that the more you, like I said, the more you learn, the more you find ways to marry the moral and the business side of things, and the way you can sidestep, loaded phrases as well, which and your bosses might decide that climate change is a loaded phrase. So keep doing that. Reach out of your bubbles as well. All of us are in game developer bubbles, and actually spending a lot more time with climate activists was illuminating. If only to find out that they're all in their own bubble as well. Smash them down. Like reach out to Jude, Felix, myself. Before we had a baby, we were organizing pub meetups and stuff like that in London, right? So it's all of these things are wonderful. In and I can speak for in and around London and in the UK in general. There's actually really quite a nice tightly knit green community. I know a lot of them were cheering Jude on, who just completed the marathon, right? But it's a good bunch, and when you are feeling low and isolated, you're not actually. So reach out, find these people because they're the ones who help you keep going. Because if you keep going and make mistakes, that's so much better than just stopping.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Tristan. Felix, what would be your top bits of advice?
I would say the best thing you could possibly do is just contact me, and we'll. I've been for both. But in all seriousness, right? Think of this as maybe there's an opportunity here to actually help your studio as well as doing something green. Maybe there's something you hadn't considered before. Come out of that bubble that Tristan so eloquently puts. And Jude, when you were saying earlier on about this becoming normalized, right? This behavior of support and project giving and all that kind of stuff becomes normalized. It's a bit like when you put your seatbelt on in a car, isn't it? Before seatbelt was invented, it was a really alien process to go through. And I can see our space being a little bit like everyone's going to be wearing the seatbelt soon. And let's make sure oh God, this sounds so corny. I'm so sorry. Let's make sure you're all plugged in for the ride. And we can help you out. That's basically my closing thoughts.
Yeah, and I think kind of like touching on those thoughts, I think the thread is, just talk to people, have your community, have your people around you, and I think that's the great thing about the community. That's like Tristan says, we've got this kind of green community in the gaming space in London. We do stuff now and again, and it's they're great support. But there's so much we've learned as well from each other, and I think that's the thing as well, is that it can be really such a tricky space, from everything from what to do in game, which projects to support, the messaging, and lots of people have tried lots of things, and so I think by kind of talking to each other and coming together, we can accelerate some of the work that we do, and we're learning all the time, especially if you kind of have tracked what we've done at PlanetPlay over the past couple of years, we've learned so much and refined what we're doing, and we're really trying to find the best channels for games to go green and get most awareness. So yeah, come and talk to us, to any of us, and yeah, we will all gladly help one another, because we've all got the same goal. But yeah, I think if there's no more questions, then I think we're at a wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good chat.
Thoughts?
Yeah, there's a couple of small questions that have come in. I mean, obviously, corporate social responsibility, social impact games. What Andy's maybe suggested that this is possibly turned off publishers or venture capitalist funders in the past. Have you sensed that? Is that something that you're sort of familiar with at all?
I'll say that, I mean, VCs are set up for scale. They want to see a 10x return on investment. That's why the mobile industry is so important to them, right? And so in indie games or small scale games they're just not part of the purview. And so just speaking from my own limited experience, and to I think what Andy mentioned earlier as well, is that here you have mass games, commercial first, often many mobile games and whatever else. Here you have games for good. and never the twain shall meet. And it's how do you make them bleed into each other? I think somewhere in there lies the heart of some level of impact. And I don't know how to solve funding other than become extremely well connected to philanthropists who want to do good. Again, in my own limited experience, there are a lot of people out there. I know Jude and I were discussing some musicians that we've met and stuff like that. A lot of people are actually out there who want to actually do good, throw money at it, and then that's part of what you do, right? PlanetPlay, but they want to be led by the hand a little bit. And so these opportunities are out there, but I think again that just comes back to connecting with one another, to share these opportunities with each other as well.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I think, sorry, I'd completely missed the VC question, but I think what I'm seeing now, obviously it's an interesting time right now, both in kind of like tech and gaming for investments. You know, and think things will settle, but I've seen a number of VCs now that have got, you know, their thesis is based on games with positive impact, or games tech with positive impact. So I think there's more of that that's coming. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years how that pans out. But ultimately, as Tristan said, you know, if gamers want this, then VCs will put money behind it because the gamers are going to spend money on it. And, you know, that's it at the end of the day, it's scale and monetization. So, but I think you know, I've seen a few VCs now that have kind of, and they're not traditionally from the gaming space, that want to get into the gaming space, but know that the way to do it is to go down the for good angle. And that doesn't necessarily mean having, you know, a game which is all kind of like impact driven, but, you know, from the foundations of the organization, how you build your culture and to the impact that you make as a game. You know, they're looking at that. And a lot of funds now are, you know, they've got ESG agendas, or they do sustainability reporting, and they want to see their portfolio of companies make an impact, because that feeds into their overall reporting. So, you know, I think from an investment point of view, if you are looking for investment, then, you know, look at the VC's sustainability reports to see which ones have the which ones, you know, do what they actually say they're going to do.
I think that's what I mean by we will find an example one at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, that shows the data impact of the KPIs increase of implementing green activations well rather than poorly. Reminds me, so when we were testing Love and Pies and was in soft launch and everything, and our day one was at 40%, right? And for a casual puzzle game, very competitive market, it's nothing to be sneezed at, but it's not like great. And then retention sort of dipped from there. And our story was very vanilla, and we had a choice of either killing the story or making it better. And we spent 8 weeks retooling it to make it into everything it is today, and dramatic and worthy of people's time and making people laugh. Retention went from 40% to 50%. And so that is a giant leap that everyone who has gone through soft launch testing knows is bloody tough. And I can't help but think that of all the people who would say like storytelling in casual video games on mobile phones, no one cares about, that argument's kind of been put to rest now, and people go, oh, ... but if it's good, it can work. And it'll be the same thing with the green stuff, right? I really believe that. It's like people will look at poor examples, including some of my own, and go, oh, therefore it's all a wash. It ain't. You just got to find that right shining example, and then you can convince a more higher swath of people to join you.
Yeah, exactly. And just you know, just a quick comment on that. I mean, this is kind of from outside of the games world. You know, like you said, get out of your bubble to talk to people or learn from other examples. But I think Unilever is a great example of, you know, they implemented something called the Sustainable Living Plan, and there was about 50% of brands that were on the Sustainable Living Plan. So they were all sustainable in terms of production, messaging, give back. But they were more profitable than the ones that weren't on the plan. So they put 100% of their brands on a Sustainable Living Plan. And if you don't fit that mold, you're out. Which I love, because they realize they can make more money by being more sustainable. So I think we'll see, I think brands are, you know, quite forward thinking when it comes to this space. But I think games are catching up. But there's a lot to be learned from the brand space. That was a bit of a tangent.
No, I think it's definitely valid. I mean, sort of going around the supermarket, seeing products that have that sort of corporate social responsibility at the forefront of everything that they do. Things like, you know, fair trade and you know, coffee suppliers, those sorts of things. It's all sort of environment is super important to these people. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to our audience today. Really appreciate everyone's input. And thank you so much, Jude, as well as Felix and Tristan here. It's been really, really fascinating, really eye-opening. And thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Like I say, we'll have all your details below in the video on YouTube. And yeah, thank you so much. And I will see you soon.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very
Cheers.
much.
Thanks for coming, everyone.